On today's show, it's a little bit of a change up. We're doing odds and predictions, not just for the Padres. What do the betting markets say? Do they have a chance to win it all, or are they in the toilet? And talk about some free agency odds and predictions as well with a special guest of covers.com, Josh Inglis. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the business, your team every day for Tuesday, December 2nd. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for 6 years now, not just for this podcast, though, but also various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, a very important sponsor for today's episode. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. And on today's show, I am being joined by a guest that has not been on the Locked On Padres podcast before, nor is he part of the Locked On Podcast Network, nor is he part of Just Baseball. It's a whole brand new one. It's Josh Inglis of covers.com, a betting website, here to help us work through whatever the odds are, whatever the markets are, whatever the likelihood is for the Padres to reach the promised land. Josh, how are you doing, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on, Javier.
Absolutely excited to have you on to do a little bit more of analysis on just like the odds on everything. We're going to start with the Padres. We're going to go with what FanDuel has right now, official sponsor of this network as well. So we're going to get into FanDuel odds specifically with the Padres and just talk about in general the vibes and how we're feeling about a team that I think is a little bit complicated to evaluate because every year, just in terms of the win totals and where they make the playoffs, they're usually a little bit down on them, understandably, because you have now this upcoming season, they're going to be without Dylan Cease, and they're probably going to be without Michael King. You've got the ownership sailing stuff, all that sort of stuff that interferes, and we're also going to get into free agency. But first, man, when you were looking into the Padres, I guess, like what was your first sort of reaction when it comes to FanDuel's projections for winning the World Series and whatnot?
I think I was high on them last year, and I know there was a lot of worry about would they open the books or could they bring people in at certain times. And I mean, a second place finish in the division is probably best case scenario, but when you're looking at the odds to win the World Series, their path is just so tough, not just to get through a much more difficult National League, but to win a division is almost impossible. Let's be honest, right? Like,
yeah.
Last year might have been the best case scenario for them to possibly win it. And what the Dodgers win, 96 games or somewhere around that. So you have such a different path. And I think that's reflective in the markets where they're 20-1 to win everything. Priced the same as Atlanta, who I know it was a lost season last year. But I mean, like Miami finished ahead of Atlanta, if I'm not wrong, ahead in the standings last year, which is interesting. They need some serious health and starting pitching to get things going. And San Diego in that part, I mean, you're losing 1 and 5 in King and Cease probably. I mean, King, for what he was transforming from a reliever to, at the time he was pitching, he was elite, right? He missed bats. He was a fantastic pitcher. Health, obviously an issue. I think he had 2 separate injuries last year with the nerve and the knee. And maybe you'd be happy to see someone overpay him this year. So that's the question this year. San Diego, I mean, you got a spot for the leadoff guy. You need power. You got lucky with Sheets to hit some bombs, and it obviously didn't pay much for that. But San Diego needs power. So we could see these odds move depending on what they do with the free agency. They now have a manager, so that's a little more enticing for people to come. But you're sitting at 20-1, same price as the Braves. The Jays are kind of being the Jays are 16-1, which I think is a little long for a team that can win a division and then just upgraded with Cease as well. So the Padres in that spot, I mean, their main competition is who? Milwaukee's at 22-1, Chicago's at 22-1, and then you go down the list, and then it's Cincinnati. So out of that break, out of the 8 teams possible, I think, to make the playoffs in the National League, you guys are being priced as number 5.
And I think that that's kind of fair. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that the Padres every year, but even betting markets aside, they have continually had like weird questions heading into the year, right? You have 2023, in which it was the least clutch team like that I've ever seen, frankly. You want to go by Fangraphs clutch rating? Fine. You want to just look at straight runners in score position? Fine. Whatever you do, the Padres just refuse to drive in runs in 2023. And that's also just a problem of theirs in general. And I'm curious to see, as I talked about on my show on Friday, whether someone like Steven Souza Jr., some new coaching, some new philosophies can get them just more aggressive in counts, and whether they could just start driving in runs more. And maybe that could like make up for the fact that this is a team that is basically hoping that a guy like Manny Machado continues to hit 30 or so home runs every year, that Fernando Tatis Jr. can return to his 40-ish home run play, level. Jackson Merrill, maybe he hits 25 or so. There's a lot of hope, though. There's not as much guarantee in the power department. So can they just hit better with runners on? That's possible. And you had that from 2023. And last year they were incredible, right? And then this year they lose on a lot of free agents, right? They aren't able to really sign anybody. They lose out on the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes, but they still won 90 games. So it's like this impossible team to evaluate. I will say that I know that we don't have them for straight playoffs yet. We only have them for the World Series odds. So we have to go by that. The Brewers are a team that I think is a good example of the discrepancy between these two, whether World Series and playoffs, for example, because I would put playoffs for Brewers much higher than the Padres. That team is designed to be regular season vultures, right? That's just what they do. And then they get spanked as soon as they get the playoffs, right? So I'm not surprised about the World Series odds on that team.
But they're not a team that opens the book at all, right? They probably won't sign anybody. They'll probably try to get rid of people off the books. Like, can you keep playing with fire? They're like the Pittsburgh Steelers of baseball, right?
So annoying.
Where they just keep winning, but you're like, look at this team on paper. It shouldn't really be where it is. And we saw a big move from the Cubs, obviously, probably like the likely loss of Kyle Tucker is big, but in that spot, does Milwaukee, they're being priced the same as Chicago. And I mean, one of them is probably going to win the division in that spot. I don't think Cincinnati's proven enough to be a contender for that full season. But like, if Milwaukee wins 84 games, has some injury bad luck, like, would we really be surprised?
No, not whatsoever. And especially with the rumors that Freddie Peralta might be getting shopped around. Again, unserious organization. They have no intention of actually winning. They have no intention of winning the World Series. But when it comes to the playoffs, they're very good at that. I think it depends on where Freddie Peralta goes. I think that could really change the odds for a bunch of teams. I could see a bunch of teams going after him. I could see Philly doing it. I don't think the Padres can, despite all the YouTube commenters just saying, well, Preller will figure it out. No, they don't have a lot of prospects right now. But I do think that it's going to be interesting. And I think that one of the things about the Padres, though, that I do want to talk about before we get into some free agent stuff is the rest of the division. Specifically, we know about the Dodgers already. We really do know about the Rockies already.
Yeah, okay,
I want to talk about the D-backs and the Giants and talk to you about how the D-backs were like the ultimate trap and why I never go against Vegas. Or I should say, I never trust it sometimes, that it feels like it was a trap.
I was on Corbin Carroll for MVP early in the year. And then
he was, yeah. He was, and so was Tatis, in fairness, to roast my guy real quick. But there was so many other chicanery that happened there, and I'm going to ask you about it in just 1 second.
Yep.
First, guys, we got to talk about FanDuel. Obviously, the sponsor for today's show. NFL Sundays move fast, though. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. If you're in on the Rams and the Panthers game, that must have been a roller coaster. And I don't know whether you did Panthers or Rams. Maybe you did Panthers. Maybe you're living life on Monday. Post-vacation, you're feeling great. Whatever it was, guys, FanDuel is the place that you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. It's the best when the game seems to shift. You know, receivers get hot, defenses tighten, whatever it is. They've got live spreads, money lines adjust instantly, player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Or where FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. The number one sports podcast network in the business. Joined today by Josh Inglis of Covers.com. Give you a little bit of a betting analysis on this. And it's really just a guise to just let me rant and really talk about the Padres odds and what's going on with this team. But I want to talk to you about Arizona and San Francisco. Because Arizona last year, I believe at FanDuel, they had them as like an 85 win over-under, right? And I know we're not talking about the over-unders. Those aren't out yet. Maybe a future show. That'll be a lot of fun, right? But I think that The reason that was so weird, and I actually wrote an article about this for Just Baseball, it was the biggest lock of all time when you only look at what was on paper. This is a team that had horrific injury luck to their starting pitching in 2024, and they still won 89 games. And then the year before, they were in the World Series. So you take that, and then you give them Corbin Burns, right? And then you give them a healthier rotation. And they still went under it, right? So that is a very difficult team. But part of me, Josh, is saying, I think the D-backs could be the team that leapfrogs this year. I feel like last year they just had horrific luck. I know that they traded some guys, but what does FanDuel say about Arizona and then also San Francisco when you get the chance to?
Well, before I tell you what FanDuel says, I think any rotation that has Edward Rodriguez and Brandon Pfaadt in the 2 and 3 hole, with Rid Nelson in the 1 spot, I don't think it has.
I like Brandon Pfaadt though. He's got aura. I like Brandon Pfaadt a little bit, but Brandon, I know what you're saying.
All right, if we want to get into guys like Brandon Pfaadt who can't pitch past 80 innings or 80 pitches without getting absolutely lit up, like you got like
I like that dude though.
Second and third, like just soft tossing lefties here, and Pfaadt, I bet most of my stuff is betting on pitching stuff day in and day out, pitching outs, strikeouts, walks allowed, hits allowed. I just find it a lot more there's less variance in it when dealing with someone who will get 5 plate appearances in a game. Brandon Pfaadt was one of my favorite fades all year because there's not a pitcher who's more in the zone than Brandon Pfaadt. He doesn't walk anybody, but he gives up so much contact. And if he just gets a lucky Babbitt game, then he can get 18 outs in 60 pitches. But he's not a guy that, unless he makes big strides or something, he's not a guy that I'd want in my 3 spot. And then Pavin Smith is now your 1. The loss of Naylor is massive. Yeah. I'm looking at this team. Corey Carroll's going to, some injuries last year, add in World Baseball Classic, which is something to really think about with guys with extra travel and extra wear on their bodies, because I'm sure you talk about it a lot. 162 games is so dumb and so useless to the sport and to the wear.
One day when I'm allowed to talk about the NBA's problem with the game schedule too. Oh my goodness, it's so dumb. But anyway,
it takes away from what is actually on the field. So no, I don't like Arizona. Looking at the odds, Arizona's at 70 to 1, bud. 70 to 1. So I wouldn't be worried about the leapfrog. I'd be more worried about the Giants maybe opening up the books and bringing some people in, because they do have some spots. I think it's the last year of the Logan Webb contract. I might be wrong, which might be the best contract in all of baseball. I don't think he's making much. If they can bring in somebody, if they can bring in like a Ranger Suarez or bring in someone on the left side there, I think they might have a deep shot. Who doesn't want to go pitch at that ballpark that's so friendly to pitchers as well? Obviously, it's a tougher division. I think San Francisco is your leapfrog worry as a Padres fan, and I think it's reflective in the odds. As San Francisco's 35 to 1, with Arizona sitting at 71 at FanDuel right now.
I will say the Logan Webb contract runs through 2028.
Holy moly!
I know. Talk about one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball. Doesn't get enough credit. The ground ball.
So when I was looking at Cy Young last year, and I think. Why can't it? I've lost I'm a hockey guy and a football guy, and now I'm getting back into Paul Skeens last year. I think it was like plus 240 to win NL Cy Young, which is just too short. You're not same thing with Ohtani MVP odds. You're not betting it because even in July, it's not going to be a lot. You might lose 50 points. So I was Logan Webb and Dylan Cease for long shot, not long shots, but mid shots, 10 to 1, 15 to 1 to win the Cy Young. So Webb, I think I agree with you, one of the more underrated guys, and a guy who at least give him some respect. He was a guy who didn't have the strikeout stuff, but he's adapted a bit more now later in this contract in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just year after year low ERA because he just produces so many dang ground balls. It's actually absurd how consistent he is. I think there's a possibility that he just has a year, because the ERA 3.22, 3.47, 3.25, 2.9 in 2022, the 3.03 in 2021. Those are low ERA numbers, but without the sexy strikeouts, I just don't see him getting it. He could maybe, because of the ground ball stuff, maybe if he gets a little bit more Ks. He had his highest strikeout rate this past year. If he just has one of those years where it just really goes right and the FIP kicks in and he gets that 2.6 that he had this year.
When's the last time we've seen a 20-game winner? I know no one cares about winning games.
Yeah. I could see a world in which the FIP kicks in a little bit more. Maybe they upgrade their defense. The last thing, though, I don't want to fully count Arizona out, only because nobody thought they were getting Corbin Burns. And that is a front office that can be aggressive.
But isn't Corbin Burns, is he ready to go in July?
I know. What I
Okay.
mean is I'm not talking about him. What I'm saying is their propensity to sign guys and go out and be aggressive when people don't expect. I think you're right. I think you're right. I just want to watch that. And I also want to see what
Well,
San
you are
Francisco.
worried about Arizona. You sound worried about Arizona.
I'm just worried about teams in this division, San Francisco or Arizona, signing guys. And I think that could
So
really
as a Padres backer, who are you most worried about between the Giants and the Diamondbacks picking up, like the next free agent?
D-backs, I think. I like their
But who
manager.
though? Like who would
I don't
you
know.
least like to see in the division? Would it be one of the left-handed pitchers? Would it be a bat?
Probably a pitcher. Because their whole thing has been pitching. Their offense is insane. Geraldo Perdomo was like a 7-win player last year somehow. So like I think it's D-backs because they have the offense. San Fran low-key has been run poorly for a while.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's kind of one of those things
they
where
might be the
like
more overrated. Like the odds at
really
35 to 1 for
low-key.
San Francisco are not enticing at all.
Yeah, I need to see it a little bit more first from them. I need to see a little bit more. The fact that they haven't really had too many prospects break out for them is also worrying too. So I'm just a little bit more worried. Like I know that Arizona will hit. I don't know if San Fran will hit, and I know that they have Webb, but I know that the D-backs offense is going to be there. I just don't. It just worries me a little bit that if they go out, maybe they bring back Merrill Kelly. That wouldn't shock me. We'll see. But my man, let's get now into speaking of free agents. Let's get into some free agent stuff. Let's talk about some of the top guys and maybe where we're leading towards some of these guys signing, right? I'm getting some flack on my channel saying that I think Kyle Tucker could go to the Dodgers. I don't know why anybody would be
Shocked?
critiquing that take. Like, wow, team that gets every top free agent every single offseason past 6 years, I think could get Kyle Tucker because they don't have any outfield depth.
Yeah, a team that has Andy Paz and Teoscar Hernandez and the upgrade. Wow.
Yeah, they could absolutely do it. I also could see them being like, we good, man. We won 2 in a row. Go sign some like decent outfielder and call it a day. I could see that too, but the Dodgers' recent history makes me think otherwise. But what do you think when it comes to like the top crop of free agents that you're paying attention to right now?
I don't know. Go down the list. Kyle Tucker. I mean, before the C signing in Toronto, it was all Kyle Tucker to Toronto. I mean, his wife's Instagram stuff was blowing up. I'm from Toronto. Everyone was talking about it. But we're in the same spot. Like it's so funny. It's almost like psyops where it's like, how much are we hearing is actually been parlayed from like Boris camps and other camps into what we hear. And because we get riled up as a Jays fan, like everybody gets excited. And then how much are they using it as leverage? So basically right now it's like Kyle Tucker, Jays, Yankees, Dodgers, Mets, Phillies. Like it just seems like those are the teams. The Jays, because they got there and they do have a lot of money, they can spend. The Yankees, obviously, in that same spot. The Dodgers can spend. The Mets can spend. Philly has some holes, obviously, with Schwarber and JT Realmuto. They got some things to go. But Kyle Tucker, you're getting a decent – he fits Toronto so well because of the emphasis on defense and all-round play. Right. So I think he's the better fit for Toronto than Cody Bellinger. And I think Cody Bellinger's like the backup plan for everybody for Kyle Tucker. But Bob Nightingale did say that teams like Tucker, but they don't love him. So I don't know the numbers out there. I think I was reading an article from Just Baseball was saying 10 years, 400 million somewhere for Tucker.
That's
so I don't think that's crazy, but it's the same teams. And then you go down the list, maybe out corner position, like Bregman to Detroit looks kind of like the betting favorite, I would assume, because of after Detroit was in on them last year, and they couldn't kind of get it done. Boston has money now that Devers gone, but just looking at the list of top paid third basemen. I mean, hopefully this is not a channel where we just crap on Anthony Rendon, but I mean, because the guy's heard it like his whole career, right? Like I get it. Like his paid per pitch ball seen like money is like $25,000.
Yeah,
like,
not great.
He's retired, but like he's a number 2 top paid third baseman, right? So Bregman's probably going to get 40 million here. So who's going to pay 40 million? Detroit probably could pony up. Bichette is one of the more interesting people because we want him to stay in Toronto, but we don't know if that price. I mean, he's 28 years old, probably 25 million. If I had to create odds somewhere, the betting favorite, I don't think there's a really short one. I think you got like a bunch of plus 180s, plus 200s because the Jays showed that they can move Andreas Jimenez over to shortstop, and Bo Bichette, as we know, is just not the best defensive shortstop. He's just not that routine guy. He's an athletic guy who can make athletic plays, but just on balls that are just regular routine, he always seems to make him a little difficult. And he's willing to move off shortstop. Milwaukee's cheap. The D-backs are trying to trade Marte. Cubs have Swanson and Horner up the middle. That kind of leaves Atlanta, the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, and Toronto. So if he goes to the Yankees, he can kind of maybe play third, fill in the spot where Jazz was awful, or he stays at short because Volpe was terrible. San Francisco needs a second baseman.
It has to be a second, yeah.
I don't know. It's tough. Where do you see Bichette?
We'll see. I think that with a lot of this top crop of free agents, it could be a fun winter, man. It's just, I can't shake this feeling that some team's going to come out of there, which is why I keep talking about Arizona. But I also forgot what about the Ketel Marte stuff. I totally forgot about that, like the weird rumors about how they don't want him anymore. We'll talk a little bit more about it in just 1 second, though. And just like that, we're back, everybody, in the waiting moments of today's hopeful predictions and all that sort of stuff. Locked On Padres with my guy Josh Inglis of Covers.com, man. We were just talking about some of the top free agents and your predictions for some of them. I think that another thing to keep an eye out for is how much will the impending lockout next year affect some deals? Are there going to be some teams that are like, screw it, let's throw our money now? I mean, Dylan Cease, I think the expediency with which he was paid was interesting to me. Very interesting. I think Trent Grisham getting accepting, I should say, his qualifying offer with the Yankees was very interesting. So I'm just like, I don't know exactly how this is going to shake up for everything. Maybe it might be the rare time in which the lower tier free agents are actually taking the longest instead of the top.
It's certainly
guys,
not
right?
like last year, Javier. It's certainly not like last year where we had to wait.
Yeah, certainly not. We'll have to see how it breaks down, but I'm having trouble, man, because I think that there are a couple of interesting players. I'm going to talk about this more on this podcast, obviously my podcast, later this week. Going to be talking about some interesting pitchers at the back end. Merrill Kelly, my guy, what's his name? Dustin May. I think there's some interesting options for the Padres out there, but I don't know about you. I don't see any way in which any of these top options are Padres guys. I think that the Bogarts contract has hampered them, and I think the Darvish contract has really destroyed them in a lot of ways. And I just don't think that they're going to be able to do that. Couple that with the sale, some of the debt rumors. Although, frankly, I'm not trying to listen to all the debt stuff because I've been hearing that quite literally since 2021, and the world keeps on spinning, as Woody Harrelson said in True Detective, right? Like, so we'll see how it goes. But are there any other, like, if you had to right now, if there's like a surprise team you think that could jump into things, who do you think it could be? Because I also, we've got Mets drama too. I don't know how much I buy into some of these locker room things. Not that I don't think that they're not real, but not to get too off topic, by the way, but I just like, as a Padres guy, all right, the team was bad, so the locker room wasn't great. This keeps happening, right? Locker room was great for the Padres last year, and then this year, and then they were bad in 23, so locker room issues. So I just don't know about those reports half the time, like how to
winning fixes everything, right?
Yeah, it really feels like that, right? Like
For sure.
I just don't know if it matters. We've been hearing best about the Mets and Padres forever. Nobody wants to talk about those teams that are loser teams that don't win any games, right? So it feels a little bit like,
but like, look at what the blueprint is. It's such a copycat league. Like, look at everybody coming out of that Jays locker room and saying how tight of a unit it was. And like, you had guys like Ernie Clement and Barger, like guys who weren't even talked about heading into the season as productive guys. And that was maybe the tightest knit group of any team that I've seen in a long time. And I think it goes a long way into not bringing in people who disrupt the chemistry of a locker room. You're there, especially in back to the 162 games. You're with these guys.
Yeah.
Way too much. Too much. And if you're someone who's making $500 million and not caring too much, and you know what I mean? It's just like a scene out of Moneyball where it's David Justice. You're like, no, you're not David Justice here. They're paying you to play for us. Like we want to see cohesion between players, and just bringing in guys at big tickets almost doesn't seem like the risk. One of my favorite, I don't know, like Detroit can't be left held in the bag if Tarek Skubal's gone. Right. And then like, if you have Framber Valdez, they might have to bring in someone this year.
Yeah.
and overpay for that situation to have some leverage with Scooble before he goes and joins the Dodgers, probably.
Yeah, right. I mean, I will say with Scooble, though, to the commentators, that is not an option for the Padres. He's a 2-time Cy Young winner. He would cost what if the Padres still had their system before the Soto trade, then maybe, yes. I honestly think that would genuinely happen. I think AJ Preller is a lunatic. He wouldn't care. But I think that what you bring up with team cohesion, I do think that while I stand by what I said, that I think that sometimes it's easy to say the team that was losing with a lot of high played players wasn't a great locker room. It is also a good point that you bring up, which is just the Padres have been very like mercenary kings for a while ago. I think that was a video game actually. Like that's what they've been doing. Like most players on this team are not homegrown. I count Tatis, right? And then they have Jackson Merrill. But for the most part, this is not, it's a team of a lot of guys who were stars at elsewhere and whatnot. So I do sometimes wonder about that. And I'm very curious to see how Craig Stammen.
But the value of bringing guys up through the system and like them playing together through
like they know each other.
100%.
Like there's just something to be said about knowing each other.
Crappy situations where they're making $250 a week playing high A ball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, man. I think that it's going to be interesting to see, and maybe that is a genuine, fair criticism of the Padres and how they operate. I would argue to people that maybe the reason they have to overpay is because they all are a small market. They have to establish themselves a little bit more, else everybody's going to choose the Yankees, Dodgers, Phillies. I also think Phillies are another team to keep an eye on because I can't tell if that team is like the ownership is just going to be like, all right, I'm taking 1 year off. Like I keep signing all these crazy players. We keep getting super far. And that team, for as much as everybody likes talking about the Philly aura and their fan, that team has only won like one series in the playoffs past few years at in Philadelphia when they had a home field advantage. The real subject of that, it's Bryce Harper. Aside from this year, Bryce Harper has been the story for them in the playoffs, but they haven't actually been this like, crazy team that you don't want to see in the playoffs, really, when you look at it. Although they have gotten close.
Their starting pitcher, I mean,
and they do.
Yeah, they're loaded with starting pitching, but it will be interesting to see if they do make some noise in the free agency after possibly losing Ranger Suarez. If they want to add anybody, then to show them how committed they are this year to re-upping, especially with the losses of people in the lineup. So Suarez could be gone, but if they bring in someone else, I mean, how lucky were they to have Luzardo just to fill in that? Sorry, Suarez, we don't need you. We got another great lefty.
Exactly. So pitching, I think that they're willing to take a hit there. I'm curious. I think they'll sign someone. I'm curious if it's a middle tier free agent or not. Like, unlike the guys that we talked about at the start, like
unsexy play, Schwarber goes back.
Yeah, or exactly. Like, it's not fun, but they're like, all right, let's re-up. Maybe we'll use some prospects. Maybe they make a trade, right? Maybe they could go out and trade for Ketel Marte. I don't really know. That would be a really sexy move for them, and it would help the Padres' odds of not having to deal with anybody else in the division other than LA. So, Josh, this has been a lot of fun. Do you have any final things you'd like to share for the good people before we call this one?
Oh, I don't know. Tough spot. I mean, it's interesting. The free agency market's really interesting, right? Because you have all your fallback plans, right? You don't get Tucker, you get Bellinger, you don't get Valdez. You can get Ranger Suarez, who I actually think Ranger Suarez should be getting Framber Valdez money. I think he's a little younger. Ranger Suarez is 30. Framber is 32. Yeah. So I think those are good fallback options. And I think what we've seen from hitters coming out of Japan, I spent a lot of time in Taiwan. I spent a lot of time in the Pacific Rim baseball run, taking a look at a lot of stuff, but the bats just don't translate as much as sometimes we'd like to think, right? We've only seen 3 bats come out of Japan in the last, 7 years, Seiya Suzuki, Yoshida, and Susogo, who just didn't pan out. So if you're a Padres fan, maybe not overpaying in those spots because Ohtani was one of one, and there's no, I think the pitching, yes, the pitching parlays here, but I wouldn't be spending big bucks on Japanese bats right now. I just don't think the pipeline's there, right? Like, do you agree, or am I just being crazy here?
I have no idea, man. I think that they need to just they need to get another Pivetta. Like, they need to find out how to be clever with their money.
Do you want another contact leadoff hitter?
No. I want power. I don't care about any contact. The Arise thing still isn't talked about enough that dude was batting second all year. And consistently, teams were throwing Tatis garbage because they're like, we don't care when Arise comes up. We just know that he's not going to drive in a run and he'll hit a single. And that's the same thing as a walk. So we're like, whatever, we don't care. And I think that really might be.
It's worse if Tatis is on, because now you have the ground into double play situation.
Double plays. And it's just. And I really think, because another thing that was to nerd out, just one last thing about Tatis, who another guy that I've been getting crap on for daring to say that the guy who finished top 10 in WAR might be an MVP candidate. I really think that it affected him. He did not hit off speed and breaking pitches. I think that they were throwing him garbage. That's my theory. I think he was off himself, and I think they were throwing him garbage because they just had no fear of a rise behind him.
Who's your perfect two guy to compliment him?
Yeah. O'Hearn, someone who gets it doesn't even matter, right? Re-upping with Ryan O'Hearn, I think, honestly, is one of the best things that they could do offensively. I really do. I think they could do that. Sure, you could take a shot on Ozuna, have him be the DH, move Sheets to first, whatever. But we'll have to see, man. We'll have to see. But maybe you'll come back on the show when we get some more projections. Maybe we get some more division stuff. Maybe we get some more win totals. But for now, everybody go check out Josh Inglis over at covers.com. And with that all being said, guys, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Stay tuned for the rest of this week. We're doing prospect talk with R. Blayton. We're doing pitchers to keep an eye on, some lower tier guys. I mentioned this before with my man Dustin May. We'll see if that's a good target for the Padres, among many other things. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friday faithful homies, take care.